왜 나는 양파 안 넣어요?
너 양파 안 좋아한다며? 맛있지?
고기장.
짠.
고생하셨습니다.
아니 진짜 맛있어.
잘 지냈어?
오랜만이다.
잘 지냈어?
반갑습니다.
잘 지냈어?
예스.
며칠 만이에요?
너희 뭐 했어? 너희 어떤 거 했어?
저희 좀 실외가 주로였어요.
우린 다 실내였어. 하지만 마지막에 셰프님 음식도 먹었어 우리.
코스 요리로. 그게 그러면 하지만이 붙으면 안 되잖아.
아니 좀 대화하기 싫어지는데 어떡하죠?
다들 보물 잘 모았어요, 근데?
완전.
얘가 싹쓸이했어. 아니 편애를 너무 많이 하셨어.
직원분들이 다 놔주셨어.
진짜?
쟤는 그냥 자기가 찾은 거고 나는 그냥 직원분들이
있는
놔주셨어.
것들을 다 받았어. 이거 그러면 어디다 쓰는 거예요?
더.
2개밖에 없어? 3. 오.
오! 우와! 오! 우와!
3.
3. 엉덩이
엉덩이
이런 쓰기.
부럽다. 나도 하고 싶다.
와, 형 말이 씨가 돼요.
오케이. 오케이.
지금 하면 돼요? 재윤. 어떡해.
스쿼트 쇼.
아니, 형 지금 되게 귀여워요.
유.
와, 지금 박수 쳐주시잖아, 지금.
그러니까.
오케이, 다음 민호.
오케이.
민호 형 핑크색 머리니까.
하나, 둘, 셋.
3이다.
예.
말이 씨가 된다니까.
하고 싶었어. 아, 내 말이.
예.
말이 씨가 된다니까.
야, 당당하네.
다음은
윤성이.
윤성쌈. 윤성쌈. 오!
야, 저거 진짜 리미티드야, 혜민아.
공주에서 잡은 거래.
야, 너무 부럽다.
오씨.
제발 상금 몰아주기.
아, 저 제발.
오.
우와! Hey, give it to me.
어딨어?
Give it to me, guy. Hey. 빨리 주세요. 와, 진짜. 이건 진짜 너무. 와.
아, 이게 뭐야.
예.
진짜 이 달러 누가
혜민아, 너
만들었냐.
마지막이야.
진짜 1 나와야 돼.
야, 혜민아, 너가 그냥 몰아줘. 야, 차라리 너한테 몰아주는 게 마음 편해.
잠깐만, 쟤 1 나오면 되는 거잖아.
예.
야, 이거 뭐.
오케이.
아, 이거 잘못된 거 아니야, 진짜? 오 마이 갓.
야, 여기 너무 오랜만이야, 이런데.
야, 혜민아, 나 젤리 사주면 안 돼?
안 돼요.
그럼 우리 다 같이 월드네커 진짜.
아, 네.
나 도넛 사줘.
안 돼. 야, 저거 후룸라이드네.
오, 야, 저거.
아, 야.
야, 관람차가.
와, 진짜.
움직이는데? 저거 안에서?
아, 저거 흔들리는 거라.
야, 저거. 야, 나 저거. 야, 근데 저것도 무서울 것 같아.
여기 추러스 팔아.
오케이.
오케이.
엠민이가 쏴요.
야, 절반밖에 안 됐네.
이래도 이렇게 많이 남는다잉. 추러스 처음 보는 사람들. 우리 기구도 타자. 너 잘 타? 너 못 타지? 얘 꼭 태워야 돼.
나는 구슬 아이스크림 먹고 있을게.
아이, 어떻게 넷이서 왔는데 형을 빼고 놀아요. 그럴 순 없죠, 형.
그러면
알았어.
브라켄을 다 같이 타자. 콜? 콜?
완전 꼴.
발 빼기 전에 가자.
알았어. 도전할게.
예!
렛츠고.
민호 형 간대요.
와, 진짜 이걸
가자.
아니, 나.
혜민아 일어나 빨리. 고고고.
들어와.
나 여기 처음 와봐. 몰라.
가, 들어가. 예! 예!
너 못 가.
여기 날개 뭐야?
야, 나 너무 무서워.
제발. 저랑 바꿨어요.
이게 한번 이 도전을 깨면 진짜 여유로 이게 이기게
와, 잠깐만, 진짜로. 나 이거 한
드라켄 이용에 대한 안전 및
무섭구나.
잠깐만. 잠깐만, 나 진짜 타는.
내가 오늘 중간이야. 너무 재밌어요. 어땠어요?
나 진짜 거짓말이 안 되는 게 안 풀어져.
죽을 뻔했어요?
아니, 저 자꾸 타잖아요. 끝나는데 안 맞이는 거야, 이 손이.
근데 이게 이렇게 가다가
지나서, 와, 이렇게 한번 빠져.
아! 진짜 알찬 하루였다.
진짜.
와.
오늘 이렇게 에이펙 체험단으로 우리가 직업 체험도 하고 또 맛있는 것도 먹고 또 굉장히 아이돌로서는 전혀 경험할 수 없는 것들을 많이 경험할 수 있어서 굉장히 뿌듯하기도 했고 또 멤버들이랑 또 좋은 추억 쌓고 갖는 것 같아서 너무 즐거웠습니다. 다음에는 8명이서 다 같이 와서 한번 경주 한번 신나게 또 놀아보겠습니다. 네, 그러면은 에이펙 2025 코리아의 응원을 위해 저희만의 방식으로 한번 응원해 보겠습니다.
오케이!
둘, 셋, 에이펙!
에이턴 파이팅!
Let's go!
예!
작은 빛이 날아와 어두운 방을 밝혀와 내 손끝에도 느껴지는 더 이미 소란스런 밤 너의 만난 얘기와 작은 미소로 하나 이체로 나를 켜줘 벅찬 떨림을 We never gonna stop 이 감정만 모두 남김없이 나 태우고 채워 on top Under my skin Too hot like a fire 내 심장 꽂혀와 바뀌어버린 너의 화살 Feel that love, feel that heart 넌 나의 모든
이곳에 비밀을 캐러 왔거든요.
팔찌는 RFID 방식을 통해서 IoT 실시간 스코어링 기술을 할 수 있는 매개체가 되는 팔찌예요.
우리가 이걸로 점수가 나오니까 제대로 올림픽처럼. 자, 출발! 야, 뭐야, 너 왜 진심으로 해? 야! Look! Let's get it.
Things are heating up as the rankings shift in real time. Tag in with RFID, and your speed and item pickups are all tracked and scored in real time. Curious about your stats? Check the kiosk for your personal score. This is a playground where fun meets tech. And now, your racing adventure starts for real.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로.
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성, 포용,
개발.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korea fired a ballistic missile toward the EC this morning, ahead of the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju next week. This is the regime's first missile launch in almost 6 months, and the first under the Lee Jae-myung administration. Just 2 days after returning from Washington, South Korea's industry ministry and the presidential chief of staff for policy are set to head back to the United States today, as they continue to work on what appears to be the final stage of trade negotiations. U.S. President Donald Trump expressed optimism about upcoming trade talks with China, saying he expects to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping soon in South Korea. He also touted the success of his tariff policies, saying Washington has done well in trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union. North Korea fired a ballistic missile into the EC this morning for the first time in more than 5 months. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a text message to local reporters that it detected the missile at around 5:10 a.m. this morning and that it was launched from the regime's Hwangbu province. This marks North Korea's first ballistic missile provocation since President Lee Jae-myung took office in early June. Today's launch comes ahead of the APEC meeting next week and a potential meeting between the leaders of the United States and China in South Korea. On the economic front, South Korean officials are heading back to Washington to fine-tune the details of the Korea-U.S. tariff negotiations. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bum and Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan depart for Washington, D.C. on Wednesday once again for tariff negotiations with the U.S. It has only been a few days since the two officials returned from earlier trips to D.C., during which they talked to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to finalize the details of the $350 billion investment package. Though there are still 1 or 2 remaining issues, the presidential chief of staff for policy had said Seoul had made substantive progress in those talks.
The chances of reaching an agreement have grown compared to previous U.S. visit, especially with the upcoming APEC leaders meeting.
The key issue of the tariff negotiations has been over South Korea's investment package in the U.S. to reduce tariffs on key products such as automobiles. Washington has been demanding a full cash investment or an upfront equity contribution, which Seoul says is unrealistic given the country's foreign exchange constraints. But as the U.S. now appears to have stepped back from this demand, the negotiations recently gained momentum.
Not really. If they were, we wouldn't be able to solve the problem. The U.S. has accepted much of our view on that issue.
With the two officials heading back to the U.S. to finalize the details, expectations are growing that the two countries could reach a dramatic agreement during the potential summit between the two leaders, as President Trump is to visit Korea soon for the APEC leaders meeting. Meanwhile, the impact of U.S. tariffs is starting to show in Korea Customs Service data, with exports to the U.S. for the first 20 days of October plunging 24.7% compared to the previous year. Even considering there were 2 less working days during this period, exports to the U.S. were still down more than 10%. Total exports to all countries from October 1st to 20th totaled $30.15 billion, down 7.8% from the same period last year, largely due to that fall in exports to the U.S. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Despite trade tensions between Washington and Beijing, U.S. President Donald Trump said he expects a fair deal with China, saying he expects to meet with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in South Korea soon. He also highlighted the success of his tariff policies, citing trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about upcoming trade negotiations with China, saying he expects to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea soon to discuss a wide range of issues. Speaking at a White House luncheon on Monday, President Trump said he believes the two countries will do well in the talks. The remarks come as President Trump moves to impose an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods starting November 1st. If implemented, the overall tariffs that China must pay on exports to the United States could climb as high as 157%. The measure follows Beijing's decision to tighten export controls on rare earth materials, which Washington sees as a strategic challenge to global supply chains. Despite the rising trade tensions, Trump emphasized that he maintains a good personal relationship with President Xi and expects to reach what he described as a fair deal. He said he hopes both sides can benefit, but stressed that any deal must be fair. The U.S. leader added that a meeting with President Xi would be very successful, noting that global attention is focused on the upcoming talks. Still, Trump acknowledged that there remains a chance that the meeting might not happen, saying that if someone were to call it off, it would not be due to hostility, but rather part of the business process. Meanwhile, Trump also highlighted what he views as the broader success of his tariff policies, saying Washington has done well in trade negotiations with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union. He argued that the use of tariffs has strengthened America's negotiating position, helped reduce trade deficits, drawn in new foreign investments, and boosted domestic manufacturing. Pundits say Washington is aiming to use this combination of high tariffs and direct diplomacy to pressure Beijing into concessions, while reassuring allies that Washington remains committed to fair and reciprocal trade. 이승재, Arirang News.
So right after returning home, South Korea's key negotiators are heading back to Washington again to wrap up what could be the final phase of trade negotiations as the country prepares for next week's APEC meeting here in Gyeongju. For more, we're joined by Professor Oh Jun-seok, Dean at the College of Economic and Business at Sookmyung Women's University. Professor Oh, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So Seoul and Washington have yet to agree on the key details of the $350 billion investment deal. What key negotiating cards does South Korea still have when it comes to tariff negotiations?
The major sticking point has been how to structure and finance a $350 billion investment in the U.S. in return for a reduction in so-called reciprocal tariff from 25% to 15%. The U.S. has been pushing an upfront cash injection, which is not that common, while the Korean government has made clear it cannot pay the full amount in cash at once, which is right. The sum should combine direct investment, loan, and loan guarantees as agreed in the original pact. In this way, negotiations have been gridlocked over the structure of investment fund. If you're a licensed financial expert, it might be a violation of prudent man rule of business ethics when you are designing capital structure of a special purpose fund of cash only without leveraged financing, cost sharing, risk hedging, or even loss splitting in time of need. Luckily, Washington is known to have accepted Korea's concern over foreign exchange market instability, softening its earlier demand that the fund be entirely cash-based to cushion the potential impact on foreign exchange market. Seoul has also requested a currency swap arrangement with Washington. Another unresolved issue is the timing, whether the lower tariff rate would apply immediately or only after the MOU is signed. The APEC meeting, as you mentioned, considered the most likely outcome is a joint statement rather than a legally binding accord or a pact. Seoul, however, is pushing for a Japanese model, seeking to embed the detailed terms in its investment pledges to ensure reciprocity. Then what Seoul has as a negotiation card beyond the balancing trade and investment of shipbuilding and supply chain, negotiators are also working on a potential update to the U.S.-Korea nuclear cooperation agreement. It is also plausible to take issue on whether to raise its defense spending to 3.5% of GDP, aligning with NATO benchmark. What is certain is the priority is not the timing of a deal, nor the structure of investment fund, but whether the result serves our national interest or not, which is exactly the same with Washington's stance.
Right, and U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to make a state visit to South Korea on October 29th, next week that is. And can we expect a major breakthrough in Seoul-Washington trade talks?
Seoul and Washington summit and Washington-Beijing summit talk might take place during Trump's stay. It is expected also that the U.S. president is highly likely to skip the multilateral summit during the APEC summit meeting. President Trump doesn't like multilateral. Instead, President Trump may hold a bilateral summit with Korea and with China before the APEC gathering opens and depart without attending the main session of the summit. Both Korea and U.S. officials have recently expressed optimism about the breakthrough in their stalled trade talk as their country's leaders are expected to meet on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Gyeongju. The U.S. agreed to reduce tariff on import of Korean products in return for Seoul's investing in the U.S., but U.S. auto tariffs are still in place as the countries remain at odds over the details of investment bond in the United States. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made a remark of great importance quite recently when asked whether the two nations can bridge their difference. When asked whether Washington could provide a current swap arrangement Seoul has requested, Secretary Bessent stated that the issue falls under the authority of the U.S. Federal Reserves. But however, the secretary added that if he were chairing the central bank, then Korea would already have a currency swap facility, just like Singapore. It seems Washington is close to wrapping up trade negotiations with Seoul, noting that two sides are ironing out the final structure of the agreement.
Right, and this week we saw South Korean business leaders playing golf with U.S. President Donald Trump. So it seems all hands are on deck to reach a trade agreement. What might have been discussed there? What's your take on their golf?
We have to interpret this event. It's a return of bilateralism before 1995. Ever since 1996, with the advent of WTO, dispute settlement mechanism in the international trade has been settled in multilateralism. In the middle of the related parties, as a green judge, WTO is involved, and then WTO is the center, and then based on fair and free trade, appellate court of WTO has made consecutive decisions till now. As a result, WTO has been the playground nowadays of global lobbyists, the international trade and investment. President Trump might pivot this playground from WTO to the U.S. Golf meeting will be an example of how to make good use of playground of the U.S. Amid the ongoing discussion of a tariff between the two, excluding WTO, golf meeting involved the U.S. president and then executive from South Korea, Japanese, Taiwan companies took place, including Samsung Electronics, SK Group, Hyundai, and LG Group, and even Hana Group vice chairman. This event was likely conducted using the shotgun start method, where teams are assigned to multiple holes and tee off simultaneously, rather than starting from the first hole. This format allows many participants to begin and end the game at the same time, making it popular for a VIP group round that require post-game gathering at the clubhouse. The meeting, reportedly arranged by the SoftBank founder Masayoshi Son, came at a critical time with unresolved tariff negotiation and significant economic interest hanging in the balance for the two allies. It is believed to have provided a key opportunity for Korean executives to directly engage with Trump on various issues in discussion. This marked the first time major Korean conglomerate leaders collectively played golf with a U.S. president and key political and business figures. The executives are believed to have traveled to the golf course via limousine bus instead of personal vehicles.
All right, I see. All right, Professor, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the international gold spot price, which had hit record highs in recent days, has plunged more than 5%. Spot gold fell to $4,115.26 per ounce as of 1:45 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, down about 5.5% from the previous day. This marks the steepest one-day drop in almost 5 years since August 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Gold futures also saw a sharp decline. On the New York Mercantile exchange, December delivery futures closed down 5.7% from the previous day. Following an investigation into Korean nationals suspected of running phishing scams in Cambodia, the South Korean government has called for stronger efforts to deal with related issues. Our Parkinson reports.
Stronger efforts with an extraordinary response, not business as usual, are needed to tackle international fraud cases. That's what President Lee Jae-myung ordered during a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, following the recent surge in scam cases linked to Koreans in Cambodia.
국가 권력과도 관계가 있다는 설이 있을 정도이기 때문에 쉽게 뿌리 뽑혀지지는 않을 것 같아요. 인력이든 조직이든 필요하면 최대한 확보해 드릴 테니까 새로운 시각으로 좀 접근해 주시길 바랍니다.
He added he's asked for the National Intelligence Service to get involved, citing the crime's international scope. He also urged cooperation among other relevant authorities, including the Foreign Ministry, to think from a new perspective when dealing with the issue. The Foreign Ministry held a separate meeting the same day to assess the situation and review detailed measures. Officials discussed ways of running the Korea-Cambodia Joint Task Force agreed last week, boosting embassy personnel and strengthening cooperation between police authorities of both countries. Meanwhile, investigations into the repatriated Korean suspects from Cambodia, allegedly involved as perpetrators in phishing schemes targeting fellow Koreans, are picking up speed. As of Tuesday, at least 49 of the 64 people transferred to Korea by Cambodian authorities have been arrested, with more to be added, raising expectations that the probe will gain even greater momentum. 박건우, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, Sanae Takaichi became the country's first female prime minister, marking a historic milestone for Japan and a potential turning point for its politics. Our Pyongyang reports.
Sanae Takaichi, the leader of the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, became Japan's 104th prime minister and the first woman to hold the office since the cabinet system was established 140 years ago. Her rise follows the last-minute coalition deal between the LDP and the conservative Japan Innovation Party, forged after its 26-year alliance with the centrist Komeito collapsed. A longtime conservative within the LDP, Takaichi advocates revising Japan's pacifist constitution, bolstering defense, and tightening immigration. She also opposes same-sex marriage and separate surnames for married couples, positions that have stirred debate among moderates and younger voters. While Takaichi's conservative credentials are well known, questions remain about how her ideology will translate into foreign policy, especially when it comes to Korean-Japanese relations. Her past visits to the Yasukuni Shrine, which enshrines Japan's war dead, including convicted war criminals, have often drawn criticism from Japan's East Asian neighbors. Yet some analysts say she may soften that stance now that she's taken the country's top office.
Takaichi is known for very conservative orientation towards history issues with Japan's East Asian neighbors. She continued to pay tribute to the war dead, including convicted war criminals at the Yasukuni Shrine. But after the victory as the leader of LDP, she had stopped herself from going to the shrine in person. So it seems like she'll tone down her hawkish stance vis-a-vis Japan's East Asian neighbors on history issues as Japan's prime minister.
South Korea's foreign ministry said it will continue to maintain close communication with the new Japanese administration and work together to sustain positive momentum in bilateral ties. The ministry noted that both countries, as close neighbors and global partners sharing similar interests amid a rapidly changing strategic and trade environment, should keep striving to advance future-oriented relations. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Plans for a Trump-Putin summit in Budapest have been shelved as both Washington and Moscow acknowledged there are no plans for a meeting in the immediate future. The delay follows stalled diplomacy to end the war in Ukraine, with neither side showing signs of compromise. The White House confirmed the pause after a call on Monday between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov resulted in no progress. Lavrov said Russia's position has remained unchanged since the August Alaska summit, when Trump and Putin last met in person. President Donald Trump later told reporters on Tuesday he didn't want a wasted meeting, saying talks would resume only when there is something real to discuss. Vladimir Putin had reportedly proposed trading parts of occupied Kherson and Zaporizhia for control of Donetsk, a plan Trump rejected, urging both armies to stop fighting and go home. In Israel on Tuesday, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance downplayed fears that the Israel-Hamas ceasefire could collapse, saying recent progress gives him great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. Speaking at a joint news conference with Trump envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Vance said he will not set deadlines for Hamas's disarmament or the return of the hostage remains, stressing that both will take a little time. He warned that very bad things could happen if Hamas fails to comply, but said pressure must be balanced with patience. U.S. officials privately fear the truce remains vulnerable after weekend clashes that killed 2 Israeli soldiers and dozens of Palestinians. Vance's trip aims to keep Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu committed to the U.S. brokered deal. Witkoff told Israel counterparts their response to Hamas must stay proportional, as next 30 days will determine whether the peace plan's second phase can begin. In Paris on Tuesday morning, former President Nicolas Sarkozy became the first ex-leader of France since World War II to go to jail. He began a 5-year sentence for conspiring to finance his 2007 campaign with money from late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. The 70-year-old arrived at La Santé prison greeted by supporters shouting his name as police cordoned off the streets. He will be held in an isolation wing for his own safety in a small cell with a bed, desk, shower, and TV, and allowed 1 hour of daily exercise. The former president maintains his innocence, writing on social media that truth will prevail, and his lawyer has filed an immediate appeal for release. President Emmanuel Macron called his predecessor's detention a human matter, while France's justice minister vowed to ensure Sarkozy's safety in jail. In London on Tuesday, a brain surgery patient played the clarinet during her 4-hour brain surgery. 65-year-old Denise Bacon, who suffers from Parkinson's disease, reportedly showed immediate improvement in her finger movement. The surgery at King's College Hospital involved deep brain stimulation using implanted electrodes to ease symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The patient stayed awake under local anesthetic while the neurosurgeon adjusted electrical currents to the affected areas of her brain. Doctors said her hand control improved instantly, allowing her to play the clarinet smoothly on the operating table, something she hasn't done for 5 years.
The sudden early winter chill has certainly made it feel like the season has changed overnight. While we had one last cool start this morning, relief is on the way. Temperatures will jump by over 10 degrees later today, bringing back that mild seasonal autumn weather we have been missing. Meanwhile, the East Coast remains wet with rain expected throughout the day. East of Gangwon-do will see 20 to 60 millimeters. The east coast of Gyeongsang-Bukdo province will see 5 to 40 millimeters. But again, this afternoon, the warm-up is ahead with highs going 1 to 5 degrees higher. Seoul topping out at 19 degrees, Gwangju, Jeju both at 22 degrees. And from tomorrow, we'll finally recover back to the seasonal average with morning temperatures returning to around 10 degrees. The forecast for the rest of the week remains near average, but by early next week, morning temperatures will plunge back down to early winter-like conditions.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
해금은 두 줄로 된 한 악기인데 저도 처음에 시작하게 된 거는 그 두 줄에서 너무 다양한 소리가 나오는 게 너무 신기했고 일단 해금이 되게 사람의 목소리랑 좀 비슷하다고 많이들 하세요. 줄을 눌러서 이렇게 음을 계속 왔다 갔다 진동하는 그런 형태를 띠고 있다 보니까 애절하다라고 많이 말씀을 해주시는 것 같아요. 이 곡은 제가 좀 오래 좋아했던 친구에 대한 제 여러 감정을 담은 곡인데요. 슬펐던 마음 혹은 뭐 고마웠던 마음 이런 여러 가지 감정들을 한데 묶어서 마음이 담긴 곡이라고 할 수 있습니다. 현대적인 음악으로 이제 재구성하는 단계를 거칠 때 항상 중요하게 생각하는 거는 음악의 분위기를 해치지 않는 선에서는 전통적인 주법들, 식임새 이런 전통의 냄새라고 할까요? 맛? 이런 걸 살릴 수 있는 요소들을 좀 집어넣으려고 하는 편이에요. 저는 요새 연주하면서도 스스로가 마음도 편하고 몸도 편안한 음악들을 좀 자주 들려드리고 싶다. 제가 음악으로 위로받았던 것처럼 제가 하는 음악들로 여러분들이 좀 위로받을 수 있는 순간이 있었으면 좋겠다. 그런 무대를 만들려고 노력해야겠다라는 생각을 했던 것 같습니다.
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Wednesday, October 22nd here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Niall.
Good morning.
Good morning. And also Moonji's with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're right in the middle of the work week, and it's called Hump Day for a reason. It's that point where we can all use a little boost to get through the rest of it. And these days, one way people get that boost is by turning to technology, whether it's productivity tools, chatbots, or even generative AI. It's incredible how quickly it's become part of everyday life, helping with everything from work to creativity to emotional support. And sometimes people even end up asking it questions they never ask another person. So this makes me wonder, so what's the most personal or interesting question you've ever asked a generative AI, Niall?
You know, I use AI for so many different things, but I started using it in, like you mentioned, in some emotional support way. I ask it to analyze different situations that I'm in, why I'm so angry at this one person and how I should manage that anger. And sometimes I ask it, you know, style consulting for my outfits, the colors that would look good on me. And how I got into using AI in the first place was actually, I was taking an online class on how to write play scripts using AI. So merging art and AI to coexist for the future as well.
So that's like a really wide variety of ways you're using it. Was there like a time that really impressed you about like advice it gave you?
I think it's just very good at organizing my scramble of thoughts and then putting it into order and saying, okay, this is what you're feeling right now, and this is what you want to do. We understand that. A healthy alternative would be this and this. So the organization aspect of it, I was very impressed.
So what about you, Moonju?
Yeah, I do use it daily. I often ask AI on my phone about the weather when before heading out, or use it to, you know, better understand a topic of my broadcast items when something's not really clear for me. And there was even a slightly embarrassing moment involving AI. So one day, my friend and I were looking at the picture that obviously seemed as a dog to me. But my friend was so confident it was a cat. I asked the AI, I took a picture of it, I showed the AI what kind of animal is it, and said it's a cat. So since that moment, I just decided and learned not to trust myself too much on animal identification maybe. Yeah, it was so embarrassing. I was so confident it was a dog, but apparently it was a cat.
Not to put you on the spot, but it's kind of hard to mistake a cat for a dog, vice versa. So what happened with that? Like what kind of animal, what was it?
All right, so the type was Sphinx.
Oh, I see.
But you know, it doesn't have a far, and it really seemed like a bulldog to me.
Oh, I mean, like a very skinny
yeah,
bulldog.
Yeah, very no, just the face of so like.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I thought this is definitely bulldogs. I was like, this is dog.
As a cat owner, that's crazy to me.
I'm sorry to every cat owners, but it really seemed like a bulldog. Just yeah, I'm sorry.
So it's clear that AI is clearing up a lot of misunderstandings, and people use it in all sorts of ways. So some people rely on it to boost productivity at work, while others turn to it for almost like a personal therapist or to tell which animal something is. So let's take a look at the screen to find out more.
It feels like it wasn't too long ago that generative AI first made its debut, but now it's hard to find anyone who hasn't used it at least once. From streamlining work processes to giving advice on everyday life, AI has quickly become part of our daily routines. But as much as it's making life easier, there's also a darker side that's starting to surface. To Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at some of the problems young people are facing with generative AI, including the rise of what's being called AI psychosis, why it's happening, and how companies and governments are responding. So as we just saw in the video, generative AI has quickly become a part of everyday life, not just for work, but also for creativity, learning, even emotional support. So it's remarkable to see how something that seems so futuristic just a few years ago is now woven into our daily routine. So today we're going to take a slightly different approach by starting with some poll results to get a sense of how people are actually using generative AI. So we asked viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel how often they use generative AI tools such as ChatGPT. So let's take a quick look here. So about 35% of respondents said they use it almost every day, while 13% said about 3 times a week, and about 10% said about once a week. Meanwhile, 42% said they rarely or never use it. So the results are quite interesting, and they show not only how widespread the use of AI has become, but also how differently people are engaging with this technology, from casual curiosity to frequent integral use in their daily lives. It's also telling how the majority of respondents said they use it almost every day. So I'm guessing a lot of young people also use generative AI, obviously. So would you say this is true now, and are there any problems that have arisen because of this frequent use?
Right. According to a survey, 86% of Korean millennials and Gen Zs have used generative AI, showing how widespread it's become. And also in the United States, a survey also found that adults under 30 are much more likely to have used generative AI compared to the older age groups. And while generative AI is becoming common, especially among the younger generation, a new issue called AI psychosis is emerging. AI psychosis refers to emotional instability or delusional thinking that some users experience as they spend longer time talking to generative AI and becoming increasingly dependent on it.
So it's clear that generative AI has become part of daily life for the younger generation, but there's also growing concerns about potential risks. And one of the most concerning is what experts are calling AI psychosis. So as use increases, we're beginning to see real-life cases that highlight the dangers of over-reliance on AI. So can you share any examples that illustrate just how serious this can get? Cases where prolonged interaction with generative AI has led to some extreme consequences, Moonju?
Yeah, the problem is that AI psychosis has in some cases, led to life-threatening situations. For example, in the United States, a man who had been using ChatGPT to gather information for a construction project reportedly became delusional, believing he was on a mission to save the world, and eventually attempted to take his own life. More recently, a 16-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl also became deeply immersed in conversations with chatbots, ultimately receiving harmful guidance from generative AI, which led them to end their lives. Again here, the parents of the 16-year-old boy have since filed a lawsuit against the OpenAI for damages. As similar incidents continue to be reported here, while more companies are developing even more advanced AI, the negative impact of AI has increasingly become a topic of public concern and also for debate.
Mm-hmm. So this really shows how powerful the emotional connection between humans and AI can become, especially when users start to rely on it for comfort or validation. And it's also troubling to think that something designed to assist and connect could, in some cases, deepen emotional instability or confusion. So this does raise an important question. So what is it about these AI systems that makes some users so vulnerable to this kind of impact, Niall?
Right. I think starting off, the age is a huge thing. Having media literacy is huge as well, but using AI, really, you need to use it with precaution. And according to an analysis by the Institute of Psychiatry at King's College in London, generative AI tends to agree with, mimic, or flatter users without verification in order to maximize the engagement. And this kind of unconditional agreement can reinforce distorted thinking. And additionally, when users believe that AI remembers their personal information, it feels intimate, and it can amplify those beliefs as if they were true and potentially encouraging delusions.
So it does sound like the more AI tries to please us, the more it can blur the line between what's real and what's imagined. And if users start to believe that AI remembers or understands them, it's easy to see how emotional independence could develop over time. So So it's not just about what AI says, but how it communicates, creating this illusion of understanding and empathy that people start to trust it emotionally. So Moonji, has there been any research that shows how this emotional dependence on AI kind of develops over time?
Yeah, there is. So the researchers from the MIT and the OpenAI conducted a study analyzing emotional changes after participants engaged in conversations with AI. They found that the longer people interacted with the AI each day, the more dependent they became on it, while their social interactions decreased and the feelings of loneliness increased. Interestingly, participants who initially engaged in non-personal conversations with AI showed even higher levels of dependence 8 months later. The researchers suggested that as these users experience the AI's intelligence during information searches, their growing trust in the system gradually developed into emotional reliance towards the AIs.
So all of this shows that emotional dependence doesn't necessarily come from personal conversations, but even from simple everyday interactions like just searching for information. And it's also fascinating that the sense of trust or admiration for AI's intelligence can actually evolve into emotional attachment over time. It also kind of sounds like a modern paradox. So AI feels like a companion to us, but it can also end up deepening loneliness instead. So we're going to get an expert's perspective on this. So we'll speak with a psychiatrist who will tell us why these symptoms occur, what's behind this growing dependence on AI, and what can be done to prevent it. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Dr. Kwon Manje, a clinical professor at Severance Hospital's Department of Psychiatry. So, hi, Professor. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, as an expert, do you believe that using tools like OpenAI can actually trigger or contribute to mental health issues?
Well, first of all, there's no direct evidence that these using AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or any other tools directly cause mental health illness. But there's been growing concerns and discussions about what you have mentioned, the psychosis, the AI psychosis. So psychotic disorder in psychiatry is losing touch of reality, and AI psychosis is losing touch of reality while using AI too much. It can involve delusions where you have fixed false beliefs, or you can have hallucinations where you have hear voices that's not there. We do see some case reports and also patients in the clinics who report worsening of symptoms while using AI. We also have some clinical reports that show novel symptoms, those who didn't have mental health problems before and then develop it while using AI. But are they common? It's relatively very few, considering how many people are using them. So at this point, do I think it might worsen people who have vulnerabilities? Possibly. Does it cause mental health problems for those who have never had any problems before? We simply don't know yet. So the lesson is we need more studies and very close observation to find out.
Right. You just mentioned that there could be some correlation. We're not entirely sure yet, but perhaps there's something positive to come out of this as well. And from a psychological perspective, do you think there could be also some positive aspects to using generative AI, perhaps even therapeutic and emotional benefits to talking with it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of benefit with using AI, especially with access. It's not just that what we use every day, but we are all developing, a lot of researchers are developing LLM-based, large language model-based treatments that can provide some treatments that are very difficult to access, like talking therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, or motivational interview for addiction. So these are very, very resource intensive, and it's really hard to get. And we are using this technology to provide these very important evidence-based treatment that is accessible to patients. Also, these large language models, or AI, they're available 24 hours. So people who feel isolated and who don't have close people who can talk to every day, I think this can be a door for them to open up their emotions, which can help them feel better and recover. And lastly, I think this can be a bridge. I think this can be a bridge to connect us clinicians to people who are having difficulties, and we can intervene earlier if used right.
Yeah, I see. So our last question for you today is AI psychosis. You've mentioned relatively we're not seeing too much of it compared to how many people are using it right now. But what do you think is the ultimate solution to preventing AI psychosis in your perspective?
Okay. So I don't think there is ultimate solution for this question, because any other psychiatric problems don't have ultimate solutions. But there are some steps I think we can take. First, as you mentioned, this immersion to this AI is a problem. So moderation and balance is important. So if you find yourself using AI all day and out of proportion to the amount of time you're spending time with real people with real connection, that can be a problem. So that would be something that we need to check to prevent. Also, it's about perspective, and it's about how we see AI. So if we see it as a program or code that uses some utterances that resemble human and that can help us create, that help us talk, that would be very helpful. But if we start immersing ourselves and starting to deify and consider these AI as superpowers, super intelligence, or those who have a superior knowledge of things that we need to follow, that is a problem. So that is also a perspective we need to change. And thirdly, we need safeguards from developers as they are working. Finally, our clinicians and family have some roles to play. If we see our patients or close ones spending too much time on AI and relying on them for decisions and kind of cutting themselves off from us or some important ties, then we should be very gently and supportively approaching them to help them gain better, deeper relationship outside of AI.
I think you made some a lot of great points here. Obviously, it's really helpful that we can use it as a tool, but as long as we remember that we should use it at moderation, I feel like it could be really helpful. And also, we have professionals like you to help us as well. So that's also a great reminder. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we just heard from a psychiatrist about how excessive interaction with generative AI can lead to emotional dependence and even distress. But despite these potential side effects, millennials and Gen Zs continue to use generative AI in their daily lives, not just occasionally, but often quite actively. So Niall, what's driving this trend? Why are young people in particular so drawn to using AI even when they're aware of its risks?
I think it starts with the fact that this technology is cool, but it's fast and convenient, and you can access information, and it's such a huge benefit of the generative AI. But I personally use it to get a good overview of many different topics. If I have to learn something, having AI to explain something on a basic level and then go into it asking critical questions surrounding the topic, it's been such a helpful way for me to learn. But once you start approaching it in a very emotional way, and like we mentioned earlier, once it feels like it's empathizing with you, you can become a little more emotionally dependent in your conversations with the AI. And so going back to the whole research and how I use it, when I research, I have to double, triple check the facts because AI can be wrong quite often. So when you're asking about your emotions in certain situations, maybe keep checking yourself to see if it's just giving you favorable answers, and give the right type of references and the good situation background to help you help you better. And I think that's the way to navigate it.
I agree. So do you have anything to add to this, Munjin?
Yeah, just a little. Emotionally responsive AI, appeals to many, younger generations because it offers a companionship without the effort of in reality keeping the real relationships that you require, emotions and all this stuff, and always available and responsive. It provides comfort and a sense of connection, which gives you a full emotional support.
So how are companies responding to growing concerns about young users becoming too dependent on or exposed to inappropriate content through generative AI, Niall?
So companies are increasingly launching AI services that's specifically designed for teenagers and minors with a focus on parental controls. And these services allow parents to set a restricted version of ChatGPT, limiting usage time and exposure to certain topics. And so, but there are some critics that argue that the shift places the blame on the incidence of the inattentive parents and framing this as a strategy to deflect the responsibility from the companies. So maybe we'll have to wait and see how they continue to pan this out.
So like you said, companies, the role of companies and governments are really important. And also today's conversation really just shows how deeply generative AI has become part of our lives. It's helping people work faster, get creative, even find comfort when they need someone or something to talk to. But as you've heard, there's also a fine line between using AI as a tool and depending on it too much. And the stories we've seen are reminders that these systems can sound human, but they're still just technology. But these issues don't mean we should turn away from AI altogether. They just mean we need to learn how to live with it wisely. And if we set healthy limits and keep a real human connection at the center of our lives, AI can be something that supports us and not replaces us. So maybe the challenge isn't about disconnecting from AI. It's about staying mindful and grounded in who we are. And that's how we make sure that this technology becomes a tool for growth and not dependence. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. And a big thanks to Niall.
No problem.
And also Moonju.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you have the best day. We are News Generation.
갈까요?
갈까요? 갈까요?
갈까요?
어디 가요?
한글 만나러!
Welcome to APEC.
여기 2025 차 좀 빼주세요. 2025.
Feels a little saturated.